Darkcast Network. The light shines brightest on our indie podcasts.
Everybody knows that true crime can be a real buzz killer, so why not pair it with a nice glass of wine?
Join us, Macy and Nicole, the hosts of Buzzkillers, a true crime podcast, as we drink our way through new bottles of wine every week, while navigating true crime cases, conspiracy theories, and even some spooky haunts.
The deep dives are kept light with banter and personal tales, and even the occasional boozy hiccup.
Listeners are encouraged to grab a drink of any kind and tune in every Sunday as we tell the tales of the wicked that plague this world.
Buzzkillers can be streamed on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, and anywhere else you like to listen. Check out our website, www.buzzkillerspodcast.com, for more information.
Hey there, this is my disclaimer. Beyond the Rainbow is a true crime podcast. It's not suitable for children, and it might not be suitable for some adults either. I have a filthy mouth. I had to get it. It was on sale, and it matched my filthy mind perfectly. Don't say I didn't warn ya. Hey there, Rainbow Warriors. You're listening to Beyond the Rainbow, True Crimes of the LGBTQ+. I'm your host, CJ, and co-founder of Darkcast Network, where you can find 20 of the most awesome shows ever. We have a Darkcast website, and I'll put the link in the show notes. On the website are little introductory videos of each show on the network. This way you can read up on them and decide who to listen to first. Beyond the Rainbow is a one-woman researched, written, recorded, and edited production. Why? Because I'm a badass! And should you feel so compelled to be a badass too, I have a Buy Me a Coffee /Rainbow Crimes account. Because coffee is my liquid addiction, so please help me support my habit. I'm on all the social medias, which technically makes me a social butterfly of sorts, I guess. Find me on Facebook at Beyond the Rainbow, and just about everywhere else as Rainbow Crimes. Plus, be sure to check out my website at beyondtherainbowpodcast.com. I'm not going to be doing a missing but not forgotten segment for just a little while. Not this episode, and maybe not the next one. I'm having a little bit of trouble getting updates from my very busy contact at the Transdo Network. So I'm just going to put that segment on hold for a bit so I don't keep bugging them. I would like to say a big thank you to Rainbow Warrior Sherry Lynn, who brought to my attention the IRA, Irish Republican Army, are not the same as the Republicans here in America. Last episode I mentioned the IRA. Sherry Lynn told me that the Irish Republicans are working to establish rights and freedoms of marginalized groups like the LGBTQ+, which is exactly what the Republicans here in the United States are trying to take away. And my friend Emily, who hosts the show Morbidology, which by the way just won Best International True Crime Podcast with the iHeartRadio Awards, she lives in Ireland, and she explained to me there is actually an old IRA and a new IRA. The old IRA used to be violent and crummy in how they handled their politics, but now they're good. The new IRA are the ones that are feared and considered terrorists by many. Emily also told me it's a very complicated situation that confuses even her. So that's about it. I apologize if I erred in my representation of the IRA being right-winged, and it's good to know that they're doing good for the LGBTQ of Ireland. Emily, congratulations on your big win, and thank you for suggesting this episode's case to me. Morbidology actually covered this case back in September of 2020. It was his 31st birthday. He was ready to die. but only after he carried out the plan he'd been thinking about for almost 2 years. He would need to murder the woman who raped him. She'd been a petty officer just like he was in the Coast Guard, and they'd developed a friendship. But she had to go and take advantage of his vulnerability. Sure, they hung out and watched TV, played video games. They even spent a holiday together. Then she had to go and ruin their friendship. She had to go and marry a woman named Anna. Lisa Trubnikova, she wasn't going to share her new marriage or her love of Anna with him. Well, fuck that. He wasn't someone she could just cast aside, especially after she raped him. And then he went and reported it to the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard. What a laugh. They were his employers. They should have been taking care of him, keeping him safe. Instead, they thought it was funny he'd been raped by a woman, another petty officer. He'd show 'em all. He was going to kill her. And then he, Adrian Loya, would have the last laugh, right before he took his own life. 31-year-old Lisa Trubnikova had grown up in Midland, Texas. And I saw I have some listeners in Midland. I apologize for calling Midland an armpit on a previous episode. Love you, Midland! Lisa was a 2001 graduate of Midland High School, and at that time she was going by Lisa Berlanger. After high school, she went to Midland College, and in 2008, Lisa joined the Coast Guard, which came as no surprise to those who knew her. Even as a young girl, she told the people she went to church with she didn't know exactly what she wanted to be when she grew up, but she knew she wanted to help people and serve others. Lisa was quiet. Some might even say she was shy. But one thing Lisa also was, she was passionate with her love of God, and she wanted to change the world someday. Lisa's church was a Pentecostal, Spanish-speaking church. She spent a good portion of her childhood traveling around with the church's youth group. They went on missions to go and help people. Lisa was pretty much a self-described Bible thumper and Jesus freak, and this started to scare her as she got older, when she started to deal with her own sexual identity. Once Lisa figured out her truth, she had to hide it, and eventually she quit the church because its rules were so strict. When she did join the Coast Guard in 2008, Lisa had already come out to her family, and they accepted her for who she was. Her parents loved her, and therefore they supported her. It makes my heart happy when parents love their kids no matter what. That's always how it should be. Unfortunately, other extended family members of Lisa's weren't so accepting. Lisa had an uncle who was a bishop at a church in Midland, and once that Lisa did come out, she had to stop attending extended family functions and church events, which she absolutely loved, because she felt so unwelcome by the congregation. I don't believe organizations such as this church should be able to call themselves people of God. They should call themselves people of hatred and judgments. It's just not right. Lisa met Anna when she was in the Coast Guard training school, and the two women were able to get transferred together from place to place serving in the Coast Guard. They'd been stationed in Louisiana and California, and then in 2012, Lisa was shipped off to Kodiak, Alaska for her last tour of duty. Anna had already exercised her right to be on the Coast Guard Reserve list. But before Lisa left, the two women got engaged. Alaska's where Lisa met Adrian Loya, and they became really fast friends. They found that they had a bunch in common with each other. Lisa and Adrian were the same age. They both had grown up in Texas, although Lisa was Midland and Adrian was in El Paso. They both had a really dry sense of humor and loved the same television shows. And finally, they both had requested Alaska as their last tour of duty. As previously mentioned, the two chummed around like buddies. They'd watch TV, play video games together, and before he met Lisa, Adrian was a loner. He was awkward and not good in social situations. He spent his time alone playing video games or online shopping. But now here was Lisa. She shared with him that she was engaged to be married. He didn't care. He thought marriage was stupid anyway. But he told Lisa he was happy for her. And then he found out that Lisa's fiancé was a woman. Adrian instantly felt bad for dropping the word faggot around her several times. Months later, Anna would come to Alaska as a reservist. She got to meet Adrian, and she didn't like him. She felt like he had some ulterior motives other than friendship with Lisa. Anna asked Lisa to please keep her contact with Adrian to work hours only. Lisa complied and she stopped hanging out with Adrian. And this royally pissed Adrian off. Lisa was his buddy. Why was she avoiding him now? He was hurt and he didn't understand. Several heated verbal altercations would happen while Lisa and Adrian were working together, and that didn't help the situation at all. Anna was assigned a 3-week reservist tour in another state, so she was going to be away from Alaska and Lisa for a bit. The following is a story that Adrian would go on to tell a number of times in the next few years. Adrian said when Anna left, a very drunk Lisa invited him over to watch The Simpsons on TV. And while they were watching, Lisa started to touch herself intimately. Pretty soon she was full-on masturbating in front of him. Adrian said that this made him feel extremely uncomfortable, and he started to become anxious. He said Lisa then tried to kiss him, and she stood up, pulled his arm to go into the bedroom. He said Lisa told him it would be okay as long as they didn't tell Anna. And then he said he could not fathom crossing that line, and his body just began to tremble. Lisa said, "Dude, what the fuck is your problem, man? Just come to bed." Adrian never elaborated on what actually happened, but he did say there was no penetration. He was mind-fucked without consent. Adrian would go on to say Lisa had mind-raped him. Okay, I just want that to sit there for just a second. Adrian then said Lisa apologized the very next day and made Adrian swear not to tell anyone. Within a day or two, Adrian had phoned his father, whom he hardly ever spoke to, and an old childhood friend, and went on to tell the story about how he was accosted by Lisa. It seemed like the popular question to ask him from anyone that he told was, "Why didn't you have sex with her?" Adrian said he didn't want it to ruin their friendship. And he also didn't want her to turn it around on him. He didn't want to be dishonorably discharged from the Coast Guard. Adrian was about 9 weeks from completing his final tour with the Coast Guard, and then he was going to be able to leave. A couple weeks before his final tour duty was up, there was a sexual harassment training course that several of the Coast Guard members were mandated to take. At one point, Adrian snapped and he started to cry. He turned to Lisa and said, "I hope you're taking notes." Lisa, who was now a married woman, just looked at Adrian in disbelief. Adrian just couldn't take it anymore. He decided to go to the Coast Guard commanders to tell his story of the night he went to Lisa's to watch The Simpsons, and he was mentally raped. His chief initially laughed, and said, "A married lesbian raped you?" The Coast Guard commanders doubted Adrian's story from the get-go, but they did launch a formal investigation. And while they were investigating, they recommended Adrian seek therapy. Adrian's therapist told him he needed to let go of Lisa. He needed to move on and just avoid her his remaining time in Alaska. Instead, Adrian decided to write what would end up being his 250-page manifesto he called Loyola Wars. Adrian was a huge Star Wars fan. In his manifesto was a 19-page letter. He called it the Lisa Effect. And he made sure that he sent a copy of this letter to Anna. Adrian writes how scared he was, how he was torn between a crush and PTSD because of what Lisa did to him that night. Adrian searched Wikipedia and WebMD, and he discovered he must be suffering from Stockholm Syndrome and a case of battered woman syndrome. The Coast Guard's investigation never found anything to back up Adrian's claims. And so when Adrian's tour in Alaska was done, he was moved to his next place where he would be a reservist in Chesapeake, Virginia. By now, Adrian had been out of Alaska for months and months. And at the end of 2013, the married women would also finish out their time in Alaska. Once it was done, they would move to their next home, a condo in Bourne, Massachusetts. Just a little tidbit. When the women moved to Massachusetts, Lisa's parents came out to visit with Lisa and Anna. Her parents adored Anna, and they loved to see how happy and in love their daughter Lisa was. And I kind of just wanted to share that. I think it's hard to fake being in love with someone and the happiness that comes with it. I've never been a cheater in my life at all. So for me, I also think that it would be hard to, even drunk, make cheating moves on someone that's not even a gender I would prefer. That would be my line of thinking. So I'm just going to put that in the wind. If it sticks with you, it sticks with you. If it doesn't, that's okay. In 2015, it had been nearly 2 years since Adrian had seen Lisa and Anna. He still thought about Lisa every single day and how she mind raped him. I know I keep using that phrase because that's the phrase Adrian uses. And I really hate not to believe someone who says they're a victim of an assault. But with this guy, I'm really not so sure he was victim of anything but his own brain and the stories he concocted there. Somehow Adrian was able to tap into the Coast Guard database, and he was able to find out where Lisa and Anna were living. On February 1st, 2015, Adrian left his home in Chesapeake, Virginia. He had plans to put into motion. His plans he titled, Wrath of Loya. See, there's something mentally up with this guy. He has to keep naming shit. This Wrath of Loya was a basic assassination mission. And it was actually the second time he had been out to where Lisa and Anna lived. The first time was in October. He staked out their condo and gathered intelligence about the area their condo was in. But this time, after he left on February 1st, he arrived on February 3rd. Adrian was feeling good. He didn't have any anxiety at all. He knew he was over Lisa. And now he was ready to kill her. He began to prepare for his one-man war. His plan was to confront Lisa and to make her see what she made him into. Then he would stab her in the heart, because that would be poetic justice, wouldn't it? Oh, he wouldn't hurt Anna. In fact, he was a gentleman. He would cover Anna's ears so she didn't have to hear any dying sounds Lisa would make. Then he would walk outside after he knew Lisa was dead, and he would provoke a gunfight with the cops. And he would die. Suicide by police. At nightfall on February 3rd, Adrian hid a camera in a nearby tree of Lisa and Anna's condo. He wanted to capture them coming in and out of their condo and secure that the intel he had on their routine was accurate. Adrian drove to retrieve the camera the next evening on the 4th when dark set in. He took the camera back to his car and he watched the video on his laptop. He then returned to his hotel room and he waited for his birthday on February 5th. Adrian watched some TV. He went over his plan again and again. He didn't want to go too early for fear of catching Lisa and Anna awake. Midnight came and went, and about 1:45 a.m., Adrian decided it was time to go. He drove to the area the couple lived in. He had made several bomb-looking contraptions, and he went and he set them about in different areas around the condo complex. Places they could be very visible should a policeman come upon one. One of the fake bombs was a boombox wrapped in duct tape and wires. Another had a couple 2-liter soda bottles taped together. Those were filled with M&M candies and duct taped with wires and a small personal radio. I guess I never realized how ominous duct tape, wires, and M&Ms could appear. Adrian then parked his car across from the complex. Actually in the middle of the street. He was blocking both lanes so no cars could get in or leave. Adrian opened his car door and he got out of his car. He put on a black ski mask, and he armed himself with an assault rifle and various other weapons, including a pistol. Then Adrian proceeded to light his car on fire. This was going to be a distraction and keep emergency vehicles from getting too close to where he was headed. Adrian then made his way to Lisa and Anna's condo. He bypassed their locked door by shooting the lock and breaking it with the rifle, and then he threw the rifle into a snowbank. Awakened by the sound of gunshot at their front door, Lisa and Anna were startled awake and they sat up in bed. A masked man appeared at their bedroom door. He pointed a gun at them, a pistol, and he ordered the women to stand up and move away from each other. He then threw each woman a pair of handcuffs, and he ordered them to put them on. The women defied him, and they didn't. Lisa and Anna screamed at him. "Who are you? Why are you in our home?" Adrian's response was to move his mask, and he yelled back, looking Lisa dead in her eyes.
"See what you've done to me? This is what I become because of you."
Lisa said she was sorry. She said she didn't mean to hurt him, and Adrian screamed,
"You had 2 years to apologize."
Lisa's apology could have been for anything, really. Sounds to me mostly like a desperate attempt to appease a hostile attacker. Both women pleaded with him to leave and not hurt them. They promised to not tell anyone he had been there if he would just go. While Adrian was thinking about what the women were asking, it gave the women enough time to flip the mattress up and try to shield themselves. Adrian didn't like this.
"What are you doing?"
He was on a mission and no amount of pleading was going to deter him. He lifted his pistol and he fired 15 bullets into the mattress. Soon he heard gurgling sounds coming from where Lisa had been hiding. Adrian was pretty sure Lisa was dying. He ran back outside and retrieved the rifle he threw into a snowbank. He knew the police would be there shortly, so he was now arming himself to do battle with them. Neighbors of Lisa and Anna's had of course called 911 when they heard the first shot of the lock. They could also look out onto the street and see a car on fire. Adrian saw a shadow. He assumed it was a cop approaching, and he set off 4 rounds from the shotgun he held. One of those bullets would hit Officer Jared McDonald in his spine. Officer McDonald dropped. He was unable to move anymore. He just lay there in the snow until other officers could help get him out of harm's way. As the minutes went by, Adrian was surprised that the police hadn't shot at him. He decided he didn't want to die. He chickened out a suicide by police. Instead, he threw down his weapons. He put up his arms. He walked out to a lit area. He lay down on the ground and he gave himself up. Back inside the condo, Anna was telling Lisa how much she loved her. She kissed Lisa's lips gently as Lisa died. Lisa Trubnikova had been shot 11 times. Anna had been shot 4 times, but she survived the attack. Once in custody, Adrian was charged with first-degree murder, armed assault, aggravated assault and battery, armed home invasion, and assault and battery on a police officer. He told the officers to be careful. He had rape alarms in his pants. What the fuck does that even mean? Yet, believe it or not, Adrian was found mentally competent enough to stand trial. At trial, Adrian told the entire courtroom of a sexual attack Lisa had performed on him in Alaska. A sexual assault or attack is legally defined as unwanted touching of someone's sexual or intimate parts. Yet Adrian could not recount any touching of his sexual or intimate parts. He only talked about Lisa pulling his arm towards her bedroom. He also blamed Lisa as the reason he was denied a promotion. Adrian's defense attorneys insisted he needed to not be held responsible for his actions because Adrian suffered from mental illness. During the trial, there were differing diagnoses for Adrian. A psychologist named John Denault, he evaluated Adrian's mental state. He said Adrian suffered from depression. Hello, Dr. Psychologist, so does 95.9% of the rest of America. The psychologist also said Adrian had delusions. He felt like he was being conspired against, spied on, cheated on. I'm sorry, but isn't that called paranoia? A psychiatrist named Dr. Martin Kelly, he also examined Adrian. He determined Adrian to be autistic. He said Adrian had Asperger's syndrome at a high-functioning level. He also believed Adrian to be delusional, as he sought moral vengeance against Lisa. And a third expert, Judith Edersheim, a co-founder of the Center for Law, Brain, and Behavior at Massachusetts General Hospital, she didn't think Adrian was autistic or delusional. She concluded he was criminally responsible for Lisa's murder. No excuses. But Judith wasn't allowed to meet or interview Adrian. She could only make her determination after reading his manifesto. She also was allowed to read the other writings on his laptop, and she was able to read his police arrest report. Anna was a witness at Adrian's trial. She gave a tear-wrenching testimony of her last I love yous with her wife and the last kiss they would ever share. On September 12, 2017, a Barnstable Superior Court jury found Adrian Loya guilty of first-degree murder on theories of extreme atrocity and cruelty and deliberate premeditation. Adrian was also convicted of multiple assault and firearm offenses. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole for the murder of Lisa Trubnikova. In 2020, Adrian appealed his sentence because, of course he did. Everyone's out to get him, as he never does any wrong without being provoked first. He lost his appeal. February 5th, which was yesterday, will have been 7 years to the day of the brutal attack on Lisa and Anna. Rest in power, Lisa. Before I get to this episode's True Crime Quickie, I would like to let you know I'm going to be doing an episode for a show called Beyond Bizarre. It's a really cool podcast that allows true crime shows to tell a bizarre crime case. My episode will be that of Catherine Janis, a 40-year-old lesbian who was murdered along with her dog in Atlanta's Piedmont Park. This case was suggested by Rainbow Warrior Amanda Stoney Panda, and the episode will come out on March 5th on the podcast Beyond Bizarre. So make sure to look for it. The 3 roommates, a man and 2 women, were told to get on their knees and lay their heads down on the bed's box spring, as the mattress was laid over the roommates' heads. This was going on the 3rd hour of being tortured by the 2 men who broke into their home. One gunman said,
"Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Someone here has got to go."
One of the women was 21-year-old college student and artist Taya Liger. Her roommates were a couple, a man and a woman that Taya had been sharing a place in Atlanta, Georgia with. It was August 23, 2019. The couple were on their way out to their car early in the morning. They were on their way to the market. And that's when they were accosted by 28-year-old Anthony Goss and his 18-year-old accomplice, Roy Hill. It started out to be a carjacking, but Anthony had changed his mind and ushered the couple back up to their apartment. That's where their 21-year-old roommate Taya was asleep. The 2 gunmen and 2 roommates barged into Taya's room, waking her. Taya was an out and proud lesbian. She stood 5'11" inches, and she was physically fit. She was athletic, and she had a lot going on for her. She really had a bright future ahead of her, until that fateful day Anthony Goss and Roy Hill forced their way into her life. From the moment they woke Taya up, the torture started. The 3 roommates were beaten. Taya was raped by Anthony. More abuse would occur before the 3 were escorted back to the bedroom, and they had that mattress placed on their heads, while Anthony played his little game of eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Anthony then tied Taya up and he locked her in a closet, while he and Roy would torture the boyfriend and girlfriend some more. Eventually, Anthony would open the closet door. Taya looked up at him in fear, and Anthony shot her dead. Roy asked Anthony why he did that, and Anthony replied,
"You said you wanted to kill someone, right?"
Roy quietly said,
"No."
Anthony shrugged and said,
"Well, someone had to go."
The boyfriend and the girlfriend were trying to escape when one of them was able to take Anthony by surprise, and the 2 fell down some stairs. Anthony got up and he ran. Roy followed them, but Anthony lost his cell phone in the scuffle. It took 2 years, but the police eventually were able to identify Anthony through his phone. He and Roy were finally caught and arrested in 2021, but not before they terrorized more citizens of Atlanta. The 2 had shot, killed, and burned in a car a 55-year-old father and husband as he was simply taking out the family trash one night. They're suspected of yet another murder, but there's not enough evidence to charge them with it. Anthony and Roy sit in jail waiting for their trials. I'll keep you posted if I hear the outcome. Rest in power, Taya. Love you, Rainbow Warriors. Remember, it's not a crime to be gay, unless you're a murderer.